Good afternoon and welcome to the May 26th Public Works Committee meeting. Now is time for a roll call and determination of quorum.
Evans, Armstrong,
Here.
Roberts,
Here.
Stroman, here. Modrick, a quorum is present. Oh, Nordstrom. Sorry, old list. Nordstrom. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Now is time for adoption of the agenda. Have a motion by Councilman Nordstrom, a second by Councilman Stroman, and we will go to roll call vote.
Evans, here. Armstrong,
Aye.
Roberts,
Aye.
Stroman, aye. Nordstrom. Aye. Motion passes.
Now is time for general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. I don't see anybody that would like to comment, so I will close that. We'll move on to consent items. Items 1 through 11, I will open public comment. Again, I don't see anybody jumping up and down or anybody in the audience, so I will close public comment. And I will look for a motion, or if anyone wants to pull anything. 3, 5, 9, and 11. So I will look for a motion for everything except for 3, 5, 9, and 11.
So moved.
Got a motion by Councilman Stroman, a second by Councilman Nordstrom. We will move on to roll call vote.
Evans, Armstrong,
Aye.
Roberts,
Aye.
Stroman,
Aye.
Nordstrom. Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 3, approve change order number 3 for project number 2491 CIP number 51225 City Hall renovation with Mac Construction Company Incorporated for an increase of $27,863.69. Whoever wants to speak, go ahead. It's not ringing in, so go ahead.
Okay. I don't have any problem approving this, but I did want to just discuss it a little bit because the first thing I encountered back in July when I first came on the council was the lack of ability to see exactly what we're spending our money on and the transparency. And as this remodeling project has gone forward, I've seen many places where money could have been saved, in particular in some ceiling tiles and some lighting fixtures, things like that. And I just am going to reiterate again, I think we need to have a little more transparent and visible a way of assessing some of these construction documents before we approve them, because I never got a chance to really study them before I voted to approve them. I guess things were just working, and I was told by several people, well, that's just the way it's done. Well, I think there's a better way to do it. I mean, I've watched as some of these lighting fixtures out in the lobby have been replaced with much cheaper fixtures. They all could have been altered by buying an LED lighting kit and having the electrician put it in. It saves several hundreds of dollars just on those kinds of things. So I only wanted to bring that up because I think we need to be a little bit more frugal going forward, especially considering the fact we don't know where the funding is going to be coming from in the next year or two. So that's all I had to say. Other than that, I'll support the vote for this.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Councilwoman Armstrong, is there anything you'd like to say?
No, thanks. Do we have a motion on the floor?
Not yet. Richie's in the queue now, so go ahead, Richie, you have the
Okay.
floor.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll make the motion to approve this item.
I'll second it.
Yes. So we have a motion by, you don't want the floor, Mr. Nordstrom?
For just a second.
Okay.
Thank you. Just to, point of information for Alderman Evans is that we can take all of these issues that you're concerned about and bring them to you, because I've seen the list. I don't remember it. I didn't memorize it, but I've seen the list. And we can certainly have that discussion and bring all that forward for it. And then if you have those list of items that you're concerned about, we can certainly have a more thorough discussion on it as to getting down into the weeds, if you'd like.
Yes, you may.
Well, that's all well and good. I'd still, like I asked back in July, I wouldn't mind seeing them laid out across the back of the room or in the room for us to study, rather than have to go search them out. And when we're voting on these really expensive things that are $3, $4, $5 million, I think it'd be nice if they were always under review so people can take a look at them like that. Because I think a lot of money could have been saved on this. Again, it's great to have a nice building, but I've been watching some of these council meetings from across the country, and we've already got one of the nicest city halls I've seen in any of the videos online. So, and here we're remodeling it. So I just think we maybe could have saved a little bit of money here, and that's my only point. So thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Councilman Nordstrom and a second by Councilman Evans to approve. Well, we'll go to roll call. I didn't quite miss it.
Evans. Armstrong.
Aye.
Roberts.
Aye.
Stroman. Nordstrom. Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll go on to item 5, request authorization for mayor and finance officer to sign professional services agreement. Amendment with Upper Deck Architects for 2019 roof replacement hail damage project number 19-2492 in the amount of $19,500. Councilman Evans, you have the floor.
Again, I just had a question on this. This is a hail damage replacement, and maybe it's just because I'm new and I haven't gone through this particular process, but is there any insurance we have that's paid to do these? So somebody who knows about that has been around long enough to understand, if they just explain the process on that for me. Thank you.
I think Mr. Tech could probably answer that question.
I'll do my best. Well, actually, Joel might be able to weigh in a little bit. We are partially covered by insurance on certain events. I'm not certain on this one if we are entirely covered. I think our deductible, if you will, went up in recent years where we're not fully covered on some of these issues. One thing is we do budget on an annual basis for roof replacements. Just for age of roofs, certainly the hail damage that has occurred in the city over the last 5 years has caused us to replace a lot of roofs due to that damage. So we do have funding set aside to make those replacements as necessary. Joel, if you have more knowledge about the insurance amount, that'd be helpful to this conversation. I'd appreciate it.
Well, generally not specific to this project, but as Dale said, yes, we have insurance that covers roof replacement, hail damage, but we do have a higher deductible. So an amount like this is definitely going to be under our deductible, but a lot of times I'm not absolutely sure at this point how they handle it, as far as a lot of times when you have a hail event, you have multiple buildings and multiple claims, and whether sometimes they aggregate those or not, I'd have to do more research on. But generally speaking, yes, we have insurance with a higher deductible that would cover this.
Thank you. Go ahead. Your microphone.
Originally, well, I'm looking here at the document here, is originally, they've added 19,000, so the total contract price is now $71,000. So I'm just wondering if any of that's being covered buy insurance or whether we pay it and then we get reimbursed later or something, because, you know, 71,000 is the whole cost of the roof, correct?
Actually, no. What's in front of you today is a professional services agreement, and that is, the addition is $19,000 to do the design and the bidding for the roof replacement for the PET building. The $71,000 is already under contract to do the design and bidding for all the other many roofs that we have that will be bidding. So the replacement cost of the roofs is not $71,000. It's going to be in the six figures somewhere. So that'll be a fairly significant project that you'll be seeing bids opened on in the near future.
Okay, and I, you know, again, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just trying to figure out how the process works, because what I get as information to vote on, I mean, I can't tell that, because I'm just looking at something here that says, project description, repair or replace single-ply membrane roofs, blah, 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 August hailstorm, contract amount 51,000, change requested 19,000, new contract amount 71,000, and so, you know, I have to make a lot of assumptions here. Again, maybe a better explanation might be forthcoming in the future, so we know exactly how we're spending the money. And again, I don't have the problem paying it. I just like to know how the process works, and I'm curious, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have kind of the same questions that Bill has. When we have roof repairs, and I'm assuming that there's several buildings in the city that need repair, and this contract is just for architects. And I'm wondering, what is the architect our agent in dealing with the replacement companies, or don't we have adjusters that go out there that the insurance hires? And I guess, why do we need an architect in this case, Dale?
On a commercial building, typically you need more than just an adjuster and a roofing company to come out. You need someone to design the roofing system. Not only that, but all of the contract documents for a commercial roof replacement are much more complicated than let's just say a residential roof. And then also they manage the contract, so they make sure that the contractor, when they're hired, they're also getting the work done and getting paid. So that's part of the responsibility of the consultant as well.
Okay, thank you, Dale. That helps me quite a bit. I yield.
Joel Landine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just point out that on the first sheet linked, it lists the funding source and it says the Building Insurance Fund. So.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, you have the floor again.
I just have one comment about these single membrane roofs that we're installing in all these public buildings. When I taught at Stevens for my 40 years, the first 25 years in the auditorium, we had the original built-up tar felt roof, lasted forever, was very, very quiet. You couldn't hear rain on the roof. And then at about 2007, they replaced it with a single membrane roof. The immediate thing we noticed that you could not even hear a lightest rain falling without it interrupting the concert, because it was so loud resonating in that room, because it lost so much of the thickness. And then it started to leak, and then they replaced it. And then they replaced it again. And then they replaced it again. I mean, and the problem with these single membrane roofs is they're really not very tolerant of hail. And we live in a hail climate, and I don't know what the technology is, and maybe nobody's doing something that's makes it possible to endure this kind of hailstorm. But I think we need to investigate alternatives to this standard single membrane roof that is now the de rigueur sort of, let's put it on every building thing, go-to solution, because this doesn't seem to be very durable, and they're not lasting very long. So I think we need to explore whatever options are out there so this hail damage does not damage these roofs as much as it does, because can't be replacing them every couple of years if there's a little hailstorm, when there was an alternative out there that would last 30 or 40 years. Thank you.
Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Evans, if you don't mind, we'll take you over to the Journey Museum. My experience is limited, but not to that, just that building, but that has been a very effective membrane they put on top of that building. Right now offhand, I'd have to think about how many years that membrane's been on there, but it's been on there several years, and I can see that the staff that's been working on this worked on that project as well, so I don't see them changing any of that current practice, but I'd be more than happy to take you over there and show you what they've got.
Well, and I'm going to comment on what Mr. Nordstrom's saying, and, you know,
Yes, go ahead.
I don't have any problem with finding out what's currently available in the technology. I do know that we had a new roof put on the area I taught in, and one hailstorm later, we had to do a concert with about 40 garbage cans all over the room because it was raining inside that auditorium. It didn't last like 5 months. Now that, and when the previous roof had lasted over, you know, nearly 35, 40 years. So I'm saying we have to be careful about just approving this because somebody decides it's the newest, greatest thing when it doesn't work. So let's be a little more, you know, careful about what we approve and look at whether or not it's going to survive our climate. Thank you.
And if you don't mind if I chime in, I wasn't going to chime in on this, but I'll chime in for a minute if you don't mind. I've dealt with a lot of commercial buildings with rubber membrane roofs and had very, very good luck with them. My guess is the one that you went through, Bill, they probably did something wrong to begin with. I've got one right now on a commercial building that's 22 years old, just went through the hailstorm that went through my house. My house had $26,000 worth of damage, and we had somebody come out and take a look at this roof. And yes, there was a few dents. There's a couple places we may have to watch that may leak in the future, but we can patch those. So I have had really good luck with them. So yes, they're expensive, but in the long run, you know, if you're going and you're peaking a roof and you're putting a typical, you know, 30, 40-year shingle on it, a couple of hailstorms like that one, which were golf ball size or bigger, you're going to be replacing that too. So I think for the lifespan that you get off of these rubber membrane roofs, I think that you're saving money in the long run. That's just my opinion from me dealing with them over the years. So anyway, I just wanted to chime in. So if there's nothing else, we'll move on to voting on this. We do have a motion? I don't think we have a motion. Okay. So we have a motion to approve by Councilman Evans, a second by Councilman Stroman, and we will go to roll call vote.
Evans. Armstrong.
Aye.
Roberts.
Aye.
Stroman. Nordstrom. Motion carries.
Thank you, and we'll move on to item 9, I believe it was. It's been a while. Authorize staff to advertise bids for Forest Hills Drive and Clark Street inlay project, project number 19-2555, CIP number 50549, estimated cost $200,000. Mr. Evans, you have the floor again.
Again, this is one of these things that we've been up looking at it. I drive that particular little stretch quite often. I don't know whether or not this is one that could possibly be delayed for another year or so till we find out what, you know, these CIP funds are going to be doing. We don't know whether we're going to have money coming in or whether the money is going to be needed to use to do something that's of more urgent need. I would say that this is similar to what we've done with the baseball project, which is different funds, but it's the same kind of thinking, is that this maybe needs to be done, but it may be something we could defray this or delay it a little bit and not do it now, since we're actually dipping into some reserve funds to cover expenses. That's my point on this one, and that's also going to be the discussion coming up at number 11, which involves some other things. So that's my only comment on this.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Nordstrom.
This is Laura.
Go
Oh,
with
go ahead, Laura, you can go first.
Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I direct some questions to Mr. Tech to get his input, or
Yes,
just
you may.
answer some questions or concert? Thank you. Mr. Tech, could you address Mr. Evans' concerns about, I guess if he has the same questions about 9 and 11, can we just address these?
Sure. To me, this is a philosophical question, and the philosophy certainly that we use for street rehabilitation is we have to keep our good streets good, or certainly spend money on our infrastructure in a cost-effective manner. This inlay on Forest Hills and Clark, the pavement condition's bad. Generally speaking, the curb and gutter and the utilities are in decent shape. So it's time to do some work on the road to get it to last another 40 years. I liken it to having a wooden deck, and every regular interval, a person needs to treat your deck with a sealant or a stain to keep the wood good, and that's what we need to do on our roadways. The most cost-effective time to do something is now. By delaying these projects, in my opinion, would cause the cost in the future to be much more, because we're going to see more deterioration on the roadways. And then my final comment would be, we have a contracting community in this town that relies on this work. I know that they're looking for work, and I think the time is right to do that. We do have the money in the bank. We're not waiting on future funds for these projects. So now is the correct time to do these projects.
So what you're saying is preventative maintenance. We have the money now, we have the time now, so let's do it now, because we don't know what it might be or what it might cost a couple years from now, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, I yield.
Can I?
Thank you. No, you
Matt?
can't. You can come in after Mr.
Okay.
Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, if I may make a motion to approve this item. If I get a second?
Second.
Just a couple of clarifying points from Mr. Tech, if I may.
Yes.
Okay. Dale, looking at this street project, it has been on the books for a few years. I don't remember how long it has been on there, but do you know how long this has been on the books to, say, for example, the design stage? Up to,
Typically on a street rehab project, it's a 3-year time frame from the time that the project is identified to the time it actually goes to bid and gets constructed. So that project and the funding has been identified 3 years ago.
thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to, a concern of mine is that if we delay this project, then it means we have to, should be proper to notify the residents up in this area that have been told about the project as well. So that'd be my concern. If we delay this, that'll be a concern for the citizens that are in this project.
Thank you, Mr. Nordstrom. And Mr. Evans, do you want to?
Okay. My problem with this particular one, and it doesn't necessarily pertain to the one that's coming up in number 11, is that I just drove it, and yeah, it probably needs to be replaced. However, we're at a time, and the only reason I even investigated it is because somebody that lives in that neighborhood had called me and asked if their taxes can't be deferred because they don't have money to pay their taxes this year. And they're wondering what we can do as a city to make sure that they're not suffering all of these consequences of not having their taxes paid on time. Well, I know we can't really affect right here the tax structure, but what we can do to help people is stop spending money that may not be there in a year and save it for uses we may have when a pipe breaks or something, because we may not have money coming in next year either. So my point in delaying this is that nobody's going to lose their car in a chug hole on that particular thing. I just drove it 4 times. It could wait another year for this funding and be put on the back burner, and we could save this money for something that maybe is more critical, that needs to be done rather than what we want to do. And as far as protecting the contractors in the town, man, you don't want to say that when we've got all of these businesses up and down Main Street and St. Joe Street that are suffering in these hotels, because our job is not to protect individual businesses. Our job is to take care of the taxpayers' money and be careful about how we spend it. So that's my only point with this. We're not obligated to contract with anybody just to make sure that they keep their contracting business healthy. I don't like that argument. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else? We have a motion on the floor to approve by Councilman Nordstrom, a second by Councilman Stroman, and roll call vote, please.
Evans. Armstrong.
Aye.
Roberts.
Aye.
Stroman. Nordstrom. Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you very much. Did we pull 11 too?
Yes.
We did? Okay. Item 11, authorize staff to advertise for payment rehabilitation project Tower Road, project number 20-2587, CIP 5798 for $550,000. And Mr. Evans?
Again, Mr. Nordstrom and I were up getting out of the car and walking parts of this just an hour ago, trying to figure out exactly what is going to be done, and we see some really critical things that need to happen right now there. We're just curious if Mr. Tech could explain to us exactly what's going on in that project, what portions of the road are going to be replaced. Obviously, with this budget, I doubt that they're going to be repaving the entire length of Tower Road, but I don't know that. And again, we've been looking at these documents we get, and frankly, I can't tell exactly the extent of the project. So if we could have clarification on that, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Tech?
I'll read to you from the agenda item summary, a link to the agenda. The project includes a mill and overlay of the existing roadway surface of Tower Road from the Mount Rushmore Road overpass, which is the bridge that crosses over Mount Rushmore Road, north to Cathedral Drive. So that would be in the vicinity of Taco Bell, I believe, there at the Cathedral intersection. Additional work includes full-depth patching and inlay section near the intersection, which means all the pavement will be removed and dug down. As most people are aware, when they drive that, there's a soft subgrade issue there. There's settlement, there's water oozing out of the road. And the installation, let's see, I'm sorry, I skipped a part there. The installation of under-drain pipes. So there's a series of pipes that'll be installed in that area to collect that subgrade moisture to help prevent future pavement damage. Spot repair of curb and gutter and installation of ADA compliant ramps. The impacted street will be restriped upon completion of the surfacing. So that's in a nutshell the limits of the project and what's going to be done there. I think it was well said in the summary.
I still am curious if the entire asphalt section all the way up there is going to be replaced. I know you kind of said that, but and Mr. Nordstrom and I were up there trying to figure if that can be done on that particular budget. We understand because we were just getting out and looking at everything. What's critical, we were also trying to figure out where that particular, where the destruction's been done by the water up there. We've got the barricades in. Is there a culvert that's under there? Is that going to be replaced? And all that riprap that's holding things back, is that hiding a culvert that's currently there or not? Because we couldn't see that.
Okay, let's go to the limits of this project. It is from the bridge down to Cathedral. That's it.
So it doesn't include that place up at
The slide
top.
area is another project that you'll be seeing coming forward in the future.
Okay.
That's a completely different issue. So currently what we're dealing with, this item that's in front of you today, is purely from the bridge north to Cathedral, and that's it.
All right, well, that explains that, because we couldn't really understand that, because that is the most critical portion, would you agree, Mr. Nordstrom, of the project, because it's dangerous on that curve up there where we've got the barricades. My concern is that we're going to spend the money building this portion of the road, which is less critical, and then if the tax dollars are dried up, which could possibly happen over the next few years, next few months, we don't have the money to fix that section that's truly a hazard for the drivers. That's my concern. And so maybe the scope of the project could be reassessed and perhaps the money be reallocated to where I think it's more critical, frankly. Thank you.
Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'll try to address a couple of the points. Is that the section that we were up on this morning is a different project. And I'd have to look up in the CIP list where that project is at in the design phase, where it's at, set up for construction. I just don't know that off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. Totally different project. And I agree with you, that is a very serious concern. But again, that's under the CIP purview, and right now, without having that document in front of me, I'd have to look it up. This section is another section that is, I look at it as preventative maintenance. It is some serious concerns over there, especially with the water issues that we have in it that are coming off of that slope. And then if we can address those, specifically the water issues that we're concerned about, I believe we can do some preventative work in this area as well as doing the fixing. But if I may defer to Mr. Tech on this. Mr. Tech, I think you did a good job of explaining on what's taking place on there, and am I close to being correct of understanding because of the under drain pipes will alleviate some of the issues that we have with erosion, water coming down this hill, et cetera?
The under drain pipes are for subsurface drainage, so the pavement failure on the lower portion of Tower Road just to the south of Cathedral, it's all due to water. And that's water trapped underneath the pavement, which works its way in from the adjoining uphill layers of soil and whatever is deep underground. So the under drain pipes are to remove the water that pools, if you will, right underneath the pavement. That's the purpose for those.
Thank you. I think that addresses most of the issues. So, and again, I agree with Mr. Evans that other issue or other project, we'll find out where it's at on the list. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yield.
Thank you, Mr. Nordstrom. Mr. Evans, you have the floor again.
Again, I totally understand the project. I just don't think it is wise right now to be doing some of these maintenance things that could be deferred again and patched, not knowing what the funding is going to be like over the next 18 months. Because some things are going to become critical and they're going to have to be fixed immediately. And I'm worried that we're committing money because we have it now, business as usual. Other people, like I said, up and down Main Street are suffering, but business as usual. We're getting calls, well, when are you going to lay off people in the city? When are you going to do this? Well, we're not. But we can't keep spending money like it's just a normal period, because that money may not be here next year when we need to fix that part of the road that's collapsed. So I'm in favor of holding back on some of these things and being very conservative about that. Yes, I understand the extent of the project. Yes, I understand why it's necessary. I love the fact that we're doing preventative maintenance. I also understand that sometimes you just don't have the money to do it and you have to plan ahead so you don't get caught. And that's my reason for being conservative about this. So again, I'm going to vote no on this, not because I don't think it needs to be done. I think the project needs to be reassessed and perhaps be a little more conservative about this, because we don't know what the funding sources are going to be like in 6 to 18 months. So thank you.
Councilwoman Armstrong, is there anything you'd like to say?
Do we have a motion?
Okay. We have a motion. If you don't have anything to say, I'd like to say just a couple of things real quick on this.
Great, thank you.
Okay. This one, because I travel this one quite a bit, and I don't travel the Forest Hill Clark Street. I may take a drive up there and take a look at, well, I travel it occasionally, I take that back, so I do know that road a little bit. But the Tower Road one I'm on quite a bit. This one, I would be concerned if we pushed it off for a year or two that we'd have a major failure on that road. I've watched it over the last year and how much it's deteriorated in the last year. I had some concerns over it last winter because of the fact that there was, when it would warm up, water would come out of that pavement, and there was a big ice sheet there a lot of times, which can be quite dangerous for the people going up to the emergency care unit up there, and a lot of the elderly people that use that clinic up on the hill, and also the people that work up there. There's quite a few people that work up there now on the other side of the bridge. So I do think that this one is something that is a pretty big issue that needs to be taken care of now. It would worry me to push it down the road a year or two. Would I like to be able to save $550,000? Absolutely, all day long. But I would worry about a major failure in this road. We all know what water can do undercutting roads. We've seen what it can do undercutting homes lately. So there are some serious issues that could happen. I would love to see, and I will vote for this project to go forward. I do believe 100% with you, Mr. Evans. We have to find the money we can find to save right now. I think we're doing a pretty good job with that, with the $6.6 million that the mayor has recommended. On the other hand, I don't think that we on this council should be micromanaging every project, because if we do, we're going to put our staff in a really, really terrible position, especially when we don't have the professional ability to be micromanaging on a lot of these projects. So anyway, with that said, I'm just going to say that I'm voting for this. We have a motion from Mr. Nordstrom and the second from Mr. Stroman. So on to roll call vote.
Evans? Armstrong?
Aye.
Roberts?
Aye.
Stroman? Nordstrom? Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you very much. Now that's the end of the consent calendar. We'll move on to non-consent items. Item 12, I'll open public comment. I don't see anybody. I have nothing on the dais, so I will close public comment. And I will move on to item 12, request from FMG Engineering on behalf of Lloyd Companies for a variance to waive the request to install sidewalk along Catron Boulevard and Wellington Drive, Rapid City, per City Ordinance 12.08.060. Staff recommends approve variance for Catron Boulevard east of Wellington Drive, and the east side of Wellington Drive deny variance for Catron Boulevard west of Wellington Drive and for the west side of Wellington Drive. And I will open it up for any comments. If not, I'm looking for a motion.
Motion to approve is written on the agenda.
We have a motion to approve by Councilwoman Armstrong and a second by Councilman Nordstrom. And nobody wants to speak, so we will look, or I will call for a roll call vote.
Evans? Armstrong?
Aye.
Roberts?
Aye.
Stroman? Nordstrom? Motion passes 4-1.
And I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We got a motion to adjourn from Armstrong. She came in late. A second from Councilman Stroman. All in favor, or roll call vote, I'm sorry.
Evans? Armstrong?
Aye.
Roberts?
Aye.
Stroman? Nordstrom? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Good meeting, lots of good discussion.